The house was too quiet for a Saturday. No music, no television. Just the faint ticking of the wall clock and the creak of floorboards as I stepped inside. I tightened my coat and glanced down at the foil-covered pie dish in my hands, still warm from the oven. Miguel had texted the night before, calling it an urgent family update. I pictured test results, maybe something about the baby. I hadn't expected to see a lawyer at the dining table. Vanessa stood first. She didn't smile. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, and her blouse, silk burgundy, not quite red, had no wrinkles. Two unfamiliar men were already seated, flipping through identical packets. The lawyer, I assumed, was the one with the silver pen poised like he'd been waiting. Miguel walked in from the hallway, sleeves rolled up, no tie. He smiled at me like nothing was wrong. "Hey, Mom." He gestured toward the end of the table. "Sit down a minute." I hesitated, then placed the pie apple from scratch on the counter. No one looked at it. My purse hung awkwardly off my wrist as I took the offered seat. Miguel nudged a stack of papers closer. A legal pad rested neatly on top. The first line was already filled in. He tapped it. "Just sign, Mom. We'll take care of everything." I looked up. Vanessa was already pouring water from the crystal pitcher, but she placed the glass well out of my reach. One of the strangers scribbled something didn't look up. The lawyer cleared his throat softly. Miguel lowered himself into the seat beside me, too casual, too close. "We've just been thinking about what's next for you. The house upkeep, the yard, the winter storms. It's too much, right?" The words slid in easily like concern. I stared at the paper. The header read, "Financial transfer. Durable agreement." When I didn't speak, Vanessa offered her version of kindness. "It's not about control. It's about making sure you're safe. Before, something happens." My hands were still cold from the steering wheel. I folded them in my lap. Outside, a wind chime caught a gust. Inside, no one moved to close the window. The pie sat untouched on the counter, and the pen, smooth silver, waited near my elbow. The paper under my hand felt heavier than it should. Not thick, but dense, like it had weight beyond its pages. I reached into my bag, pulled out my glasses, and settled them on the bridge of my nose. The font was formal, tightly spaced. Miguel leaned in as though to help. "It's just in case you decline someday," he murmured. Vanessa didn't look up from her phone. One of the men yawned into his fist, then tapped his pen against the armrest. The lawyer remained perfectly still, eyes on me. My finger traced the bolded line, "Durable power of attorney. Immediate activation." No medical review, no court requirement, no doctor's note. I flipped the page slower this time. My thumb caught on a paperclip. A name caught my eye, Dr. Cynthia R. Bell. I looked up. "Who is this doctor?" Miguel didn't flinch. "She works with Vanessa's cousin. She's reputable. She's not mine." I turned the page anyway. Vanessa sighed long and loud. "We didn't think your primary would understand the urgency. The next section was worse real estate assets. Lot number, assessed value, sale projections. My house, my address, my land." I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles paled. Miguel lowered his voice. "You've always kept things so organized. We figured we'd do the same. You don't have to worry about the details." I looked at him. His shirt was pressed, but a thread hung loose at the cuff. He didn't notice. Vanessa stood and walked to the kitchen voice light as she opened a cupboard. "We've already talked to someone about listing your house. The market's up this season." The word landed like a slap. Listing. She poured herself a glass of something pink, not offering it to anyone. As she turned, I heard her mutter, just barely, "She still dresses like it's 1992. How is that stable?" My breath caught. The room held still for a moment, like everything was waiting to see what I'd do. I closed the folder softly. They weren't preparing for something to happen to me. They were preparing for me to disappear. And I wasn't ready to give them that. I excused myself softly and stood. No one tried to stop me. Down the hall, the light in the guest bathroom flickered once before settling. I closed the door behind me, twisted the lock until it clicked, and turned on the faucet, just loud enough to muffle whatever came next. The mirror was unforgiving. My mascara had smudged beneath one eye. The blush I'd applied that morning looked gray in the lighting, and my mouth, that tight line I hadn't noticed until now, was starting to tremble. I gripped the sink. The porcelain was cool beneath my fingertips. My purse was still on my shoulder. I dug through it and found the folded piece of paper I'd tucked into the front pocket a week ago. I had almost thrown it away at the grocery store parking lot. Miguel had left it under my windshield wiper like it was nothing. Family needs to come together. Just trust me. I unfolded it slowly, then tore it clean down the middle. The pieces floated into the small trash can by the toilet. The sound of water masked the buzz of my phone. I turned it over. Noelle's name was already on the screen. I hadn't told her I was coming here. Hadn't wanted to worry her. I opened a blank message and typed slowly. You were right. It's not about care. It's control. I didn't send it yet. Instead, I tore a paper towel from the dispenser and pressed it gently to my cheeks, blotted the streaks, then wiped my palms. When I looked up again, the woman in the mirror didn't look any younger, but she looked awake. The faucet knob squeaked as I shut off the water. By the time I returned to the dining room, they'd rearranged the papers neatly again. Miguel had taken my seat. Vanessa was scrolling on her phone, her bare foot bouncing beneath the table. The lawyer looked relieved when I walked in. Miguel stood and offered the chair back to me, sliding the silver pen across the table as I sat. It stopped at the edge of my placemat. I didn't touch it. I'd like time to review these, I said evenly. At home? With someone I choose. Vanessa's lips parted like she might object, but Miguel raised a hand. Of course. Take your time. We just wanted to be sure we were on the same page. I folded the papers without hurrying and placed them in my bag. Whatever page they were on, I wasn't reading from it anymore. The sky cracked open just as I stepped onto the porch. I pulled my coat tight around me and walked down the steps. Slowly, the papers in my bag protected, but my shoes already slick with mud. The pie was still on the kitchen counter untouched. Let them keep it. Vanessa's voice rang out before the front door even shut behind her. You're really going to leave like this? In the middle of a conversation, I kept walking. The gravel shifted under my soles. Her heels clicked across the wet concrete until she cut in front of me at the edge of the drive. Arms crossed her pale blazer already spotted with rain. You really want to make this ugly, she whispered, because you're one call away from a car turned onto the street. Headlights caught the water on Vanessa's earrings, turned her warning into glitter. Noelle's sedan came to a slow stop in front of the house. Her window rolled down just enough. You all right? She called out. I didn't answer, just nodded and walked around Vanessa like she wasn't there. My hand trembled as I pulled the passenger door open. Vanessa reached out just for a second, then slapped her palm once against the glass as I got in. Her face twisted. Go ask your spinster friend to sign your will, she shouted. Maybe she'll let you move into her dusty old sewing room. Noelle opened her door and stepped out slowly. Not a word. Just stood there, eyes locked with Vanessa's. Vanessa backed up, smoothed her sleeve, walked away. The door closed. Noelle slid back into the driver's seat and turned the wipers on. I didn't say anything until we were 3 streets away. The rain softened against the roof. Sorry to pull you out. You didn't. I told you I had a feeling. She glanced sideways. You still have it. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small brass key on a broken chain. Placed it in my palm. Closed my hand around it. We didn't talk for the rest of the ride. At her guest house, I kicked off my wet shoes and stepped onto the woven rug she'd had since college. The space smelled like peppermint tea and warm wood. a guest bed kitchenette desk. Enough. I took the key to the kitchen drawer and laid it beside my phone. The last message I hadn't sent still glowed on the screen. Then I opened the drawer beneath it and pulled out the envelope I'd hidden the week after Marston died, the one marked for bank box only. Do not shred. The vault door closed with a soft thud behind me, sealing out the smell of coffee from the teller counter. The air inside the credit union's safety box room was dry and too cold, like they chilled it on purpose to keep time still. I slid box 317 from the steel wall and carried it to the bench in the corner. My purse stayed at my feet. Noelle had driven me here, waited in the car. She'd asked once if I needed company. I told her not for this part. The box held 3 things. The title to my house folded in a heavy manila envelope with the original county seal still pressed flat. A brown accordion file with a clipped copy of Graham's trust agreement, our lawyer's blue ink still clear above the notarized stamp. And a smaller envelope cream-colored with Graham's handwriting in bold ink across the front. If Miguel ever tries to take control, show them this. My chest ached before I even opened it. The bench was hard beneath me as I sat and broke the seal. The paper inside was lined. Graham's handwriting hadn't changed in the 39 years we were married. Still tight at the edges, slanted like he was leaning toward the future. Lene, if you're reading this, it means I was right to worry. Miguel talks about helping, but you and I both know he sees care as control. If he ever tries to make you feel small or unstable or unsafe, you take this letter and the trust and go straight to Marcus Downey. He's kept the file active. You are fully protected under the alternate trustee clause. It cannot be revoked by Miguel or anyone else. You've always handled the hard things with grace. Now handle this with steel. I love you. Let them underestimate you. Just once. Graham. I folded the letter back into the envelope and pressed it flat. The sound of my phone unlocking was sharp in the quiet room. I opened my contacts and scrolled to Marcus's name. He picked up on the second ring. Mrs. Verlaine, you kept the envelope, didn't you? Every year, I breathed. It's time. I stepped out into the sun and texted Noelle that I'd need the full afternoon. There were appointments to make and files to scan. And this time I would not be caught off guard. The law office smelled like eucalyptus and toner. Soft lighting filtered through the frosted windows, warming the quiet air. Meredith Chu tapped her pen lightly against a leather folder, watching me over her half-rimmed glasses. We sat knee to knee, just the two of us in a paneled office, with a glass pitcher of water and a tiny brass clock that ticked a little too loud. She slid the draft toward me. Everything's here. The fiduciary firm you chose has been notified. Noelle's power of medical decision is locked in, and you're protected from any claims of instability. Her voice didn't rush. Neither did I. I reached for the pen, smoothing the sleeve of my coat before my hand touched the paper. My signature was still neat. No tremble, no hesitation. Each page turned with a soft rasp as I signed and dated. We reached the page about Miguel and Vanessa. Are you sure? Meredith asked gently. I didn't flinch. $1 each. No more. No less. She nodded once and marked the clause with a yellow tab. The document outlining the fiduciary transfer was heavier, more clinical. I signed that too, placing my initials at every corner like a stitch along a wound. When the pages were clipped and sealed into their envelopes, I let out the breath I'd been holding since Tuesday. Would you like to file a formal incident report today? Meredith asked. I opened my purse and handed her a sheet of paper, folded twice. It listed the names of the individuals present. The pressure tactics used the specific language Miguel and Vanessa used, and a copy of the message left on my windshield. I already started it, I said. Good, she replied. It means if they try again, there's a record. She rose and walked the documents to the assistant outside. I sat back and stared at the framed photo on her bookshelf, An old woman in a garden holding pruning shears, her face stern but sunlit. When Meredith returned, she tucked one final copy into a sealed envelope with my name written across the front. Keep this somewhere private, but reachable. By the time I stepped outside, the wind had changed. I tightened my scarf, slid on my gloves, and texted Noelle that I'd be home for dinner. Then I turned toward the notary's building across the street, where the next set of filings waited. The driveway was still cracked in the same place it had been when Graham taught Miguel to ride a bike. Same oil stain near the curb. But everything else felt foreign, now airless, colder, despite the sunlight. The court officer waited beside me, papers in hand. Meredith Chu stepped forward and rang the bell once. I didn't flinch. I didn't fidget. Miguel answered the door in gym shorts and a faded college t-shirt. His hair was unbrushed. He blinked hard, then laughed too loud, too late. You didn't have to come all the way here. I held out the envelope. He didn't take it, so I placed it on the console table just inside the doorway. My fingers brushed a forgotten Lego piece on the surface. You're served. Do not contact me again. He opened his mouth, but footsteps interrupted. Vanessa appeared in the hallway with their toddler on her hip, barefoot and glaring. You're doing this in front of your grandson. I looked at the boy, round cheeks, drowsy eyes, a grape juice stain on his shirt. I knelt slightly, not toward him, but to retrieve something from the side of the console. A canvas tote, half-zipped, jammed with loose objects. Inside, Graham's woodworking tools, wrapped in a dish towel speckled with glitter glue and broken glass. I rose slowly, pressing the bag to my chest. I did everything in front of my son. He watched me pack his lunch with a bruised wrist. He watched me sell my piano so he could go to college. Vanessa tightened her grip on the child, but didn't speak. And he watched you call me unstable for wearing thrifted clothes. Miguel's arms folded across his chest. That's why I'm here. Behind him, I glimpsed the dining room. The same table where they'd spread out the legal pad 2 weeks earlier. Now covered in unfolded laundry and an open tablet playing cartoons. I turned Graham's bag still in my arms. The court officer opened the passenger door for me. Meredith glanced over. Did you get what you came for? Not everything, but enough. As we pulled away, I didn't look back, not until the street curved. Then I saw Miguel still standing in the doorway, unmoving, unreadable. The bag rattled once in my lap. One of the screwdrivers had splintered through the cloth. I folded the towel around it gently, then set it down beside me as the car turned toward the notary's office. There were still filings to deliver. The shop windows were clearer than I remembered. Years of dust and neglect had been stripped away, revealing the old oak displays Graham built with his own hands. Now they gleamed beneath soft pendant lights, each one illuminating a timepiece waiting to be wound. Owen. The new craftsman moved with the careful rhythm of someone who respected silence. He tightened the inner casing of a mantel clock while I stood beside a tall grandfather model, adjusting the hands with a velvet cloth wrapped around my fingers. Turn it slow, I murmured, not to him, but to the clock. It gave a satisfying click at each notch. He glanced up. You sure you don't want to keep a stake in the business? I shook my head and kept my eyes on the brass pendulum. I've already had enough stakes in my back. This one's yours. I'm just here for the polish and the peace. He didn't argue. Good. Graham would have liked him soft-spoken, precise, and never in a hurry. That was the rhythm of this work, of healing. The scent of brass polish lingered on my hands even after I stepped into the back office. The same tiny desk Graham used to scrawl notes on napkins. A sealed envelope sat neatly on the blotter. Inside, my first royalty check, $520. Small, maybe, but real. Honest. Earned not through silence or sacrifice, but structure. Owen knocked gently on the frame. You still okay with the new name? I ran my thumb along the letterhead again. Halberg & Co. Not just Graham, not just me. A beginning, not a monument. Better than okay. I stayed until the last chime was tested, until the locks turned, and the shop was dark. My car smelled faintly of polish and old paper when I started the engine. Back at Noelle's guest house, I folded the check into a drawer with a label that read, "Personal, not shared." Tomorrow, I'd sort out utilities at my own house, not to sell it, to reclaim it. There was time now for once truly mine, and it ticked forward steady, without asking anyone's permission. The folding tables smelled faintly of laminate and lemon cleaner, but the community room had warmth to it, real warmth. Mismatched chairs, a coffee urn with styrofoam cups, voices rising in hesitant laughter as the first attendees found their seats. I set the stack of printed guides in 3 neat rows on the front table. The bold titles still made my chest tighten. What to ask before you sign anything. Power of attorney hidden dangers. What to do when your yes was forced. Behind me, the projector clicked on. My hands were steady as I clipped the microphone to my blouse. Noelle had offered to come help, but I told her I needed to stand alone for this part. Across the room, a woman in her 70s hugged her purse close to her chest as she read the handout. Her lips moved as she read one sentence again and again. You are not required to prove your competence to keep your rights. Halfway through the hour, a man raised his hand. His voice cracked. They told me I'd lose the insurance if I didn't sign. Said it was standard paperwork. But now I don't even have access to my own retirement. I walked him through the small print on the form he'd brought. The rest of the group listened in silence. No one interrupted. Afterward, I stayed behind to help a woman fill out a notarization request. Her hands trembled as she folded her copy of the guide into her coat pocket. At the door, she hesitated. My daughter. She said I was out of step now, that I should be grateful for what I get. You're not out of step, I said. You're just not for sale. She cried quietly as I walked her to the elevator. On the way home, I stopped by the pharmacy to pick up my prescription calcium and a refill on the joint supplement Graham used to take too. As I rounded the corner to the counter, I caught sight of Miguel near the vitamin aisle. He looked up. His face changed. Then he turned and walked out head-low, hands buried in his hoodie. I paid in cash, tucked the receipt into my wallet, and walked out into the afternoon sun. Behind me, the sliding doors hissed closed without a sound. The front door clicked open beneath the court officer's badge. Miguel didn't speak, just nodded from the staircase, one hand gripping the rail, the other still holding his phone. His socks were mismatched, his hair uncombed. I stepped inside, purse on one shoulder, canvas tote tucked beneath my arm. The house looked the same but smelled different, like takeout grease and something going sour in the kitchen drain. 45 minutes. 3 items. That was the agreement. The deed was in the lockbox upstairs. I found it still tucked behind the file cabinet where I'd originally placed it. It had a faint fold from being shoved under too many envelopes, but the notary stamp was still crisp. I slipped it into a folder and moved on. The photo album took longer. I found it in the garage, wedged beneath a cracked plastic bin labeled Party Supplies. Damp cardboard peeled off the cover. When I opened it, the spine crackled. There we were, Graham in a denim apron, Miguel with skinned knees, and me holding a pitcher of lemonade with hair swept off my face like I still had time to care. I didn't pause. The album went into the tote. The last clock sat on the laundry room shelf, hidden behind a laundry basket full of unmatched socks. Brass dial still clean despite the dust. Graham had etched the initials LH in tiny script beneath the gear housing. I lifted it carefully and polished the face with my sleeve. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, arms folded tone fake light. "You look well, Linny." Staying busy, I didn't answer. Not a nod, not a glance, just the soft click of the tote snapping shut. At the threshold, I turned to Miguel. He stood 2 steps above me, now taller, but smaller somehow. "Next time you invite someone to sign away their life, make sure they don't know how to read." His jaw moved, but nothing came out. I left 10 minutes early. Back at Noel's, I wiped the clock gently and placed it beside the framed photo of Graham at his bench, lamplight glowing across his cheekbone. I lit a small candle, not for mourning, for space, for breath. The flame danced quietly between them.